Greetings and salutations, it's theological introspection here. Gonna do the redo now of Genesis chapter 1. Figured tomorrow's church, good as time as any, to do my Bible study. Alright, so in chapter 1, verse 1, I find it interesting that heaven and earth are both lowercase. I also like to ask, when was the beginning? What did the beginning mean? Like, what's sort of going on there? It's kind of unclear, and I think that's I think it's done like that on purpose. God is capitalized, so we're definitely talking about a person here. Or someone with personage. In verse 2, what does it mean to be formless and void? Is that like something like a blueprint maybe? Because I especially like to think about it here, like how he says something and then he does something in the next verse, where it's like God says a thing and then God actually goes and does the thing. So I kind of thought like that's always the way I was kind of looking at it in a sort of human perspective, because it's like God trying to explain to Moses how he did it, or something along those lines. Is the darkness evil at this point? And like, what is the Spirit of God? Because like that implies that the Holy Spirit's already there, and God's there, and they're over the waters, and he's like creating the light. I've heard a lot of people talk about Jesus and the light is them like creating Jesus at the same time. Weird thoughts. What does God said mean? Like, is he giving an order? Is he like speaking into existence a blueprint? Like, it's kind of unclear. And again, I think it's meant to be. I think it's meant to be not literal in that sense. It's in the sense that it's almost impossible to describe in words. Were light and dark not separate by verse 4? And I'd like to sort of imagine how that was possible, because the verse kind of implies that they were separated, which means they were together, which is kind of weird, because as we know that darkness is only the absence of light, so it kind of makes a weird visualization to separate the two. And then God names that separation. He gives it purpose and sort of like meaning by doing so, in my opinion. And then this sets forth the first timeline and the first set of days, which will later bring into the question of like, is this day different from God's day? Oh, our day, sorry? Is God's day different from our day? And this separation seems kind of odd. And I will add a note that all of this is done amidst these weird waters, which keep getting referenced to. Then God makes a plan to split the firmament. No, to make the firmament, to split those waters. Sorry. And I looked into what firmament means, and it's like sky and heaven, and are those two things interlocked, or are they separate? Are they one? Are they two parts of the same thing, but separate inside that thing? Really brings into question what a lot of people think about that word firmament, to my mind. And then again, we get this implication that God actually has to do some things to make them so. And yeah, it's at 1.8 now that we see that God names that firmament heaven. So that name was given to heaven by God, which is probably why we don't understand what the concept is. And then we see God use the waters to create more waters, and then dry land appears from nowhere. So it begs a lot of questions there. Where did the dry land come from? Was it always there? How do you make water from water? Or did he even change anything? Just why was there waters there to begin with? Where did they go? What does that even mean? Then he names them, because he gets to name everything before man gets here, of course. And then we find that God orders grass and herbs and all those different things. Is this like the planting of the seeds that it keeps referring to? And then in 1.12 we see that the earth actually brings forth those seeds. So it's like, quite obviously they planted them there, almost. And this is where we start to see that the timeline on the days for the first timeline. In 1.13 we see day 3. And now in 1.14 he finally makes the sun and the moon to establish our days, which is like weirdly separate for some reason. I don't think it's weird. And then God puts them in the heavens. In the heavens. The heavens being the firmament. So when I imagine the flat earthers talking about their firmament, and it's like inside the firmament dome, it's not in the firmament, it's in here with us. I don't know. I think they've got that really wrong. And then God actually has to do those things, because again he says he's going to do them, and then he does them. And then for some reason it's almost as if they forgot to add that he did it with stars as well in 1.16. And then in 1.17 it really hammers home the in part and specifies that this is done mainly for lighting purposes, actually. And then in 1.19 we've got day 4. And then in 1.20 we have the weird out of place birds, because obviously they came from dinosaurs and can't come before animals, and the fish. And if it just said like the moving creature, it would actually make a lot more sense, to be honest, if you took out the whole birds and the fish idea and just put moving creature, because that would be a better description of a lot of the early animals back in the day. In 1.21 we have the same issue, now just in the action. In 1.22, reproduction is given as a blessing to the animals. So it's not just a blessing given to man, it's given to all those things as well. 1.23, day 5. In 1.24, now we get later animals. So like all those sorts of deals, except that you get the arthropods now, which arthropods were a much earlier creature. In 1.25, we get the emphasizing on the action again. Again, arthropods seem out of place. In the same day, in 1.26, God creates man in our likeness. So there's more than him. And I think one of the ideas I've been having is that when he says something, he's actually giving orders to people in a sense of a blueprint, maybe. I say people, but probably I don't know what type of people. Could be most likely angels, some people think, but there's somebody else there helping God, in my opinion, doing all the things he says. And that's, he helps or something, and then that's how they come into action. There's no establishment of who they are. And this is where God gives man dominion over the living part of creation. And this is what I was talking to with Brick about today, about it being sovereignty or control, where sovereignty is power or authority. So like, there's a lot of different ways you can take this. And I think that's why that is why I was very stuck on the word dominion there with him, because I think it's very important that word was used, unless they can really, maybe Richie could do his thing and point out a different meaning, and I could be kind of wrong. Again, then there's the act, but we also notice here that God creates females equally to man. There's no sort of separation. And this is where God gives man the same blessings as animals. Also, I'd like to add a point here. Does subdue imply that it was wild? And this is where I like the idea of dominion being more of sovereignty over everything. It's sort of, and this is where I got the word governance from, more from Richard, because it's more like that governance where we're here to oversee the sort of how everything goes. We got to look after nature. We got to take care of the planet. We've got to care for it. It was given as a gift from God, so we should take care of it. In 1.29, God informs humanity about the blessings, and plants are referred to as meat, sort of. It's kind of like, there's some sort of weird phrasing where I feel like either herbs are given for the specific reason to season meat, or plants sort of have their own meat, and herbs are for the meat. Something along those lines. And then in the last one, I put 1.31. Everything is awesome. Because God sees everything on the sixth day, and, well, everything is awesome. So, got a few notes here. First question I feel that's begged is like, what dimension is God come from? Sort of, if he's in the fourth dimension, then doing a lot of this can happen all simultaneously at the same time. The time frames kind of mean nothing to him, and that's why his day is so much larger and incomprehensible to man. It's always the way I've sort of wrapped my brain around it, otherwise it can't make sense. And I think it's not meant to, because like I said, knowing the mind of God is kind of impossible. Does God have limitations though? That is another question. Just because his brain would be incomprehensible to mine doesn't mean it wouldn't be limitations from his point of view. It's impossible to say from the human point of view if God would have limitations at all. And it would only take, it would always take him giving the understanding of why those limitations would occur that we could ever grasp it, I feel. What are the waters like? I just can't wrap my head around it. It's obviously not water, otherwise it wouldn't be used to make water in that sense by being referred to before the water is made. It's just, even if it is water, it's still, where did it come from? What is it doing there? How can he be above it if it's everywhere? It's really, again, maybe I gotta be God to understand that. I'm pretty sure firmament just refers to everything outside Earth, just the whole observable universe, possibly the cosmos as well. It just makes sense. I don't see it. It just, every context is used in that sense. It even goes as far as to include the sky, just so you can be aware that, yeah, everything, the sky and above, everything that's not on terra firma. And, like, the only other thing is that there's no way to square away the birds and the arthropods from the story. They're just in the wrong place. Maybe just it's just there because Moses didn't know how to put it down in a way where it would always make sense no matter the generation. Something along those lines. Anyway, that's about all. Probably boring as hell, but hopefully better quality than the last one, so that if I watch it back I can at least I'll get something out of it. Anyways, if you do watch, thank you for watching. Peace and respect. Latest.